Good morning, guys, and welcome back. I hope you've had an excellent time of learning. You've been learning for a while now, and it's getting better. Welcome to sixth grade reading today. I'm Miss Williams as well again from Callaway Smith. Last week, we discussed comparing and contrasting texts. Now, as I stated on last week, we were going to continue with that same standard, but we're going to go a little bit deeper, do something a little different with it. So, let's get right into it. Our objective for today is to compare and contrast one author's presentation of events with that of another. Here are some terms to know. Now, same as on last week, we discussed how to compare and contrast. So let's just quickly review that. Comparing and contrasting. So when we compare, we're telling what's alike, similar things. And when we contrast, we're telling things that are different. Good. Now, we're also going to focus deeply on an autobiography as well as a biography today. We're going to compare and contrast those two today as well. Now, let's recap. An autobiography is the story of someone's life. It's written in first person. How do we know if it's first person? Well, we're going to see certain things like certain pronouns. I, me, my. Yeah. Now, as a biography, this is written, could be on the same person, definitely, but it's written by another person, not the actual person that the story is about. Now, this is written in third person. Third person pronouns could be he, she, him, or even her. Sometimes his as well. As I stated, we're going to look at an autobiography and a biography. So let's start with the autobiography. We're going to read about Theodore Roosevelt. I'm sure you know a lot about him through your history class. So the first excerpt is from Theodore Roosevelt, an autobiography by Theodore Roosevelt adapted from Part 1, Boyhood. The summers were spent in the country, now at one place, now at another. We, children, of course, love the country beyond anything. We disliked the city. We were always wildly eager to get to the country when spring came. And we were very sad when in the late fall, the family moved back to town. In the country, we, of course, had all kinds of pets. Cats, dogs, rabbits, a coon. We even had a sorrel Shetland pony named General Grant. When my younger sister first heard of the real General Grant, by the way, she was much struck by the coincidence that someone should have given him the same name as the pony. Strange. Now, we can relate to this because a lot of us have animals, we have pets, and we give them names. Some of them have real names, meaning people's names, and sometimes we have weird names, some things we make up. So this is not too far-fetched. Let's keep reading. I was a sickly, delicate boy and suffered much from asthma. I frequently had to be taken away on trips to find a place where I could breathe. One of my memories is of my father walking up and down the room with me in his arms at night when I was a very small person. I would sit up in bed gasping with my father and mother trying to help me. Now, we've only read 2 paragraphs of this particular excerpt from his autobiography. I've learned something today. I didn't know that he was sick as a child. And his illness was the fact that he had asthma. Yeah. So, we know he was sick. He had asthma. He loved nature. We know this because he loved to be outside. He loved to be in the country. And he had many pets, different types of pets. We also know that this particular text was written in first person because it is an autobiography. Now, how do we know for sure that it is an autobiography? Can we prove it? What do we know about an autobiography? Well, for starters, we know that it's written in first person. We also know first person means that we're going to see certain types of pronouns. Yes. Those pronouns could be I, me, or my, even we. Let's go back and look at it again. Can you identify some pronouns from this first paragraph? Yes, how many did you find? Good. So I noticed it was the same pronoun being used over and over again. In the first sentence, we had we. Second sentence, same thing. Third sentence, same thing. And it goes on and on and on and on. And then the last one, number 8, is my. These pronouns let us know that the story is about him. He's telling a story about himself, which proves it is an autobiography. Now, one thing we didn't discuss about autobiography, well, it begins with auto. It's a prefix. It means self. Another dead giveaway. Let's look at that second paragraph again. One thing I noticed, there were different pronouns being used, but it's still first person. I, he used I again over here. So we know that he's talking about himself. We know that he's the one telling the story. Very good. Now, there's some other things about an autobiography that we need to discuss. In an autobiography, when it is written in first person, of course, we see, we visualize, we notice the pronouns. But also, authors include their feelings, their private thoughts, even memories. Now, in this paragraph, did you notice any feelings or memories? Yes. In this sentence, he mentions one memory as a child, how his father walked up and down the hall with him because he couldn't breathe and he was sick. Very good. Let's move on to the second excerpt, our biography, again, about Theodore Roosevelt. Very good. Now, let's remember, a biography is written in, yes, third person. Now, we know that third person is going to use certain types of pronouns. It's going to also use, or it will use, he, she, him, her, even his. Let's get started. So this excerpt is from Theodore Roosevelt, A Wilderness Warrior, by Jonas Koos. Introduction. Do you recognize this face? Perhaps the wire-rimmed glasses gave him away. This is the face of Theodore Roosevelt, 1858 to 1919. This is the year he was born, and of course, this is the year that he died. The 26th President of the United States. In 1927, Roosevelt was one of 4 presidents whose face was immortalized on Mount Rushmore. Now, I know you know this already. You've read this, you've learned this, you've seen it in your history classes over the years. You've had a lot of years in that, doing that now. The picture that you're seeing in that corner, that is it. Okay. As a result, today, his face is recognized worldwide. This carving shows Roosevelt as a strong, healthy man. So, you might be surprised to learn that as a boy, he was weak and often sick. Now, we know that we're comparing and contrasting texts, correct? Yeah. We just noticed something. In the first excerpt, the autobiography, he also mentioned, that he was sick as a child. So there's a comparison. Now, let's focus back on this particular biography. We're looking for pronouns. What pronouns should we find in third person for a biography? Yes, him, she, her, his. Well, what pronouns did you notice here? We have him, his, as well as he. You're on a roll. Let's move on to the second paragraph. Well, before we do that, one more thing I want to discuss. In a biography, it's based on facts. So we know that we're dealing with or reading about facts when we see numbers, dates, current events. Now, one thing about authors that write biographies, most of the time, the biography is written about that person later in their life or after death. This is due to the fact that we can get more current, up-to-date information. So, in here, we know that he was born in 1858 and he died in 1919. It also stated that he was the 26th president of the United States. That's a big deal. Now, due to that as well, he was one of 4 presidents that had their face immortalized on Mount Rushmore. All right, let's move on from there. Second paragraph. Theodore Roosevelt was born on October the 27th, 1858. He had an older sister and a younger sister and brother. Roosevelt had asthma when he was young, which made breathing difficult for him. In order to sleep, he often had to be propped up in a chair. Even though Roosevelt's body was weak, his mind was strong and eager for adventure. His younger sister, Corinne, wrote, "My earliest impressions of my brother Theodore are of a rather small, patient, suffering little child, who in spite of his suffering was the acknowledged head of the nursery." Now, this paragraph tells us a lot. Once again, we have facts. We know his actual date of birth, October the 27th, 1858. It also elaborates on the fact that he was sick as a child, and it goes into more detail that states again that he had asthma. Now, let's talk about something else dealing with a biography. So again, we know biographies are written in third person, you're correct. We know that we're going to notice certain pronouns, he, she, him, or his, definitely. We also know that it includes facts. We know that the author is going to implement more up-to-date information. We also know that the author can and will do interviews for more closer encounters. So in here, we noticed that, his sister was interviewed, and she gave a recall of her growing up with her brother, how she remembered him, and what she remembered about him. The main thing that stuck out in her head was how sick he was as a child. Good. Here are notes from a wilderness warrior. We know that it mentioned when he died. He died in 1919. He was the 26th president. His face was on Mount Rushmore. He had asthma as a child. He was very sickly. There was a quote from his sister. That was that research interview. He loved nature. They elaborated on that a lot. Also, it was written in third person, which we know now it is a true biography. So let's focus on what we've learned so far. What's the difference between an autobiography and a biography? Well, we know that an autobiography is written by the subject, meaning the person's actual life that we're talking about. We know that it includes personal memories as well as feelings. We also know that it is written in first person point of view, meaning you're going to see pronouns such as I, me, we, or my. Last but not least, an autobiography also includes the subject's private thoughts. Sometimes when they're writing, especially let's say in a memoir, they may just write exactly what they're thinking at the moment. That's how they feel. It's their feelings. They're putting everything into it because they are the person, and no one can really give us that information but that person. Good. Now, what's the difference in a biography? Well, a biography is written in third person point of view. Pronouns here would be he, she, him, or her, even his. It often includes more up-to-date information. Well, again, we learn that most biographies are written towards the end of a person's life or after death. So at that point, we can do research and find out more information, more current information and up-to-date information about that particular person. It also includes research from different sources and people. Now, in this particular text, I researched from a different source was his sister Corinne. Very good. Last but not least, for a biography, it is written by another person about the subject. Now, what have we just done? We're working on our standard. We have just compared and contrasted. But what do we compare and contrast? Well, we're mainly contrasting the difference between an autobiography and a biography. So what is similar to them? What is the same? They both include information about real events and people in the subject's life. Facts. Let's continue reading. We're going to go back to the autobiography. This is the last paragraph for that particular text on Theodore Roosevelt. Quite unknown to myself, I was, while a boy, under a hopeless disadvantage in studying nature. I was very nearsighted, so that the only things I could study were those I ran against or stumbled over. One day, my friends read aloud an advertisement in huge letters on a distant billboard. I then realized that something was the matter. For not only was I unable to read the sign, but I could not even see the letters. I spoke of this to my father. Soon afterwards, I got my first pair of spectacles, which I literally opened an entirely new world to me. What is a spectacle? We should use context clues. That sentence states, I spoke of this to my father. Soon afterwards, I got my first pair of spectacles, which literally opened an entirely new world to me. So when I'm using my context clues, I'm trying to figure out the meaning of a word. I'm supposed to look at any and everything that is around that word. Yes. Now, that means anything that came before it, after it, and of course within that sentence. Spectacles are glasses, so he was able to see better. Good. I had been a clumsy and awkward little boy, when much of my clumsiness and awkwardness was doubtless due to general characteristics. A good deal of it was due to the fact that I could not see and yet was wholly ignorant that I was not seeing. So he did not quite understand why he couldn't read that billboard. He couldn't see that well. He could only see things that were up close. Very good. That's what nearsighted means. Now let's look at our notes again on this autobiography. We've already discussed in the first two paragraphs that he was a sick child. He had asthma. He loved nature. We have established that it was written in first person and it is an autobiography. What have we learned from this final paragraph? Well, we've learned a lot. We found out that he was also nearsighted as a child. He had a lot of memories of childhood. He remembered getting those spectacles, those glasses, so he could see better now. He also was learning how beautiful the world was after he received those glasses so he could see better. He was missing out on things. He didn't know how pretty that flower was over across the room. Now he does. Let's go back to the biography. We're going to continue reading the biography now. This one again, a wilderness warrior. Young Theodore, nicknamed Teddy, also had a passion for nature. He collected animals and insects of all kinds. He then used this collection to form a museum in his own home. He called it the Roosevelt Museum of Natural History. As an adult, Roosevelt became widely known as an authority on American mammals. It is no wonder that the much larger American Museum of Natural History in New York City has an exhibit hall in his name. Nor is it surprising that a child's stuffed toy, the teddy bear, was named after Roosevelt. Now, some of you may know and you may not. There's a teddy bear, a toy called Teddy Ruxpin. Now you know where that name came from. It was from Theodore Roosevelt. Very good. Now, this particular paragraph told us a lot about him. It elaborated on how he loved nature and everything he did, what became of that. Because of his love as a child growing up for nature and the animals, a lot happened. Let's keep going. In the second paragraph, it states that Teddy Roosevelt's love of nature did not stop with animals. Although he was born and raised in New York City, Roosevelt much preferred the country to city life. His love for open spaces led to an interest in preserving them. Thus, as President Roosevelt is perhaps best known for setting aside land for 150 national forests, 51 federal bird reservations, 5 national parks, and more. Thanks in part to Roosevelt's devotion to the great outdoors, anyone who wants to can now escape the noisy city, meaning move out, go to the country area. Very good. Now, recall, we learned in the beginning of the biography his date of birth as well as when he died. We also found out that he was the 26th president. He had his face immortalized on Mount Rushmore. He had asthma as a child. We know he's very sick. We also read a quote from his sister. He loved nature. This final paragraph elaborated on how he loved nature and what became of that. We know that it was written in third person and it was a true biography. Now, what can we add to our notes? He was nicknamed Teddy. Good, like a teddy bear. And we learned something else today, that there's a toy called the Teddy Ruxpin, was named after him. Now, he had a passion for nature, formed a museum in his own home called the Roosevelt Museum of Natural History. He was before his time. There was an exhibit hall named after him later in years. And of course, this led to the creation of those national forests, bird reservations, and parks. Now, we've done a lot today. We compared and contrasted the difference between an autobiography and a biography. Now, let's focus mainly on the text for Theodore Roosevelt. We learned that in Theodore Roosevelt, it was a biography written by Theodore Roosevelt, of course. It was written in first person. It included a memory of wanting to study nature and disappointment that nearsightedness made it difficult. It also included his feelings about how beautiful the world was once he received those glasses. In the biography, A Wilderness Warrior, we learned that, of course, it was a biography written by another person. It was written in third person point of view. It included the fact that the American Museum of Natural History was an exhibit hall named after him, as well as the examples of how his love of nature led to the creation of these national forests, reservations, and parks. Now, what do we know about both texts? We learned that it included information that revealed everything that he loved about nature as a young boy, as well as how sick he was as a child. He had asthma. Now let's wrap it up. Today we compared and contrasted author's presentation of events of one of another. We compared and contrasted autobiographies and biographies. We talked about autobiographies being written in first person and the pronouns that are used in first person. We also discussed the biography, how it's written in third person, as well as the pronouns. Now, you've done an awesome job. You've been doing excellent these last 4 weeks. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I love talking to you. Hope to see you again next week. Enjoy your time and keep learning. Have a good day. Bye.